I'll now pass over to Chair for this evening, Aamer Anwar. Really needs no introduction, so I'll pass straight over to him.
Thank you, Sam. Assalamualaikum. I'll be chairing the meeting tonight, so there's just a couple of guidelines. There's a number of questions that have come in advance, so I'll be going directly to those people. If people have questions to ask as a result of what the panel have to say, I'd ask you to raise your hand. I'd ask you to respect the chair, and if your point lasts longer than 30 seconds, not a politician, so I don't want you to speak longer than 30 seconds. So if it lasts longer than 30 seconds, don't bother answering it, because we've got quite a tight schedule. Some of the panel members have to leave, people have to go to press, so I'd ask you to respect that, and also not to heckle, just simply to ask the questions and let the panel respond. The first person to ask a question is Ken Imrie. Is he here? Ken.
Yeah, first question, so I'd like to ask, is it acceptable for airports to be used as staging posts for flights containing either people with US sending to be tortured on black sites, or for bombs being sent to kill people in Lebanon? For example, during the Lebanese war, 1.2 million bombs were dropped on Lebanon, supplied by America, and 90% of those were dropped in the last 48 hours of the conflict. So is it acceptable?
Thank you, Ken.
If I perhaps introduce myself, I'm Bill Aiken, the Conservative member, who is currently actually no longer an MSP, it's for about 3 weeks or so. Interesting question, absolutely nothing to do with the Scottish Department, of course. I appreciate that all of these matters are a matter from the Ministry of Defence, a matter also from the Foreign Commonwealth Office. So really none of us here as members really do have any influence on that. However, I'll answer your question. First of all, I don't think it's appropriate that people should be tortured in the first instance. Whatever means of transport is used to take them there. So could they sort of kill that one right from the start? The issue of the Lebanon and the way in which that war was fought was something which concerned me very greatly. I do not think that the British government came out of that with any great credit. I think the government of Israel came out of it looking extremely bad indeed. What happened here was totally and utterly unacceptable.
Margaret, Curran, the party?
Yes, I'll introduce myself as well, as I wasn't mentioned earlier. My name is Margaret Curran, and I'm MSP with Glasgow. Well, I'm the prospective MSP with Glasgow Ellison, and went through the election in a few weeks' time. A very serious question. Now, obviously, it isn't outside the issue, not a resolved issue, so we've got direct responsibility for it. So therefore, it's not just that I'm trying to dodge it, because I welcome one to it. But in terms of our work, there are things we should do when things are raised with us during elections. You want to pursue and follow up issues. We can't do that in terms of the reserve issue. Nonetheless, as I say, it is an important issue and was a subject of a debate. The rendition flights was a subject of a debate in the Scottish Parliament some months ago. I know the position of the Scottish Executive, or certainly Labour in the Scottish Executive, was at that time that if there is any evidence of flights being used for inappropriate and extreme purposes such as torture, and obviously we would sign up to all the accords on that, then that would have to be pursued. But we have to avoid aviation rules in terms of letting people refuel, but there shouldn't be any inappropriate use of our air force on that basis, and we would use the force of law to ensure that's the case.
Robert Brown from the Liberal Democrats.
Yes, I think I echo the point made by colleagues that it's not the responsibility of the Scottish Parliament as such, but it's certainly the responsibility of all of us, I think, as citizens of the United Kingdom and residents in Scotland, to have views on these important matters. On the issue of the rendition flights, that was something on which my colleagues in Westminster made a considerable fuss at the time about the particular issue there. I think there has to be some degree of principles in the way in which we apply policy across the United Kingdom in these matters which have got foreign policy implications. Now, I think in actual fact, in some ways, it goes to the heart of the somewhat flawed relationship that currently is between the United Kingdom and the United States, because I think we've actually been dragged in the aftermath of the Iraq War and Tony Blair's involvement in too close relations in some ways with the United States to a number of things which we should not, in fact, be having to do with at all. And in the instance of, Bill mentions the point about torture, absolutely rightly so. It's not acceptable, I think, for any government to either rely directly or indirectly on evidence obtained by torture or by other methods which contravene European human rights standards, international human rights standards. And I think that was the thing which stuck in the throats of most people with regard to the rendition flight aspect. I don't want to add anything on the Lebanon point. I agree, I think, with what Bill said about that. He expressed it very well. But again, it is a side issue in a sort of way to the flawed relationship that I think we've had in foreign policy terms ever since and before the Iraq War and the United Kingdom's unfortunate involvement in it.